The first episode of Season 2 is titled 737. Before we talk about the meaning of the title, I first want to talk about the wider vision for the whole of Season 2. Vince Gilligan describes the season as one of unforeseen consequences. Throughout the first 7 episodes, we saw how people got caught up in Walt's schemes and often caught strays, with Hugo and now Tuco's buddy old pal being the most recent examples. This season, however, will show us the wider ramifications of people like Walter. Ramifications we might never consider or even imagine as possible, but ones that can eventually be linked right back to the actions of a single man. And so, the title of 737 signifies 2 very different but also directly connected things. One of those is Walter's calculus of how much money he needs.
That's $240,000 plus $360 plus 737. $737,000, that's what I need.
But also, the 737 plane, which we'd see crash in the season finale. If you combine the titles of 737, down, over, ABQ, the message becomes crystal clear. The root, the true cause of this, is Walter and his pursuit of money regardless of the cost. Jane's father grieving her death and causing the crash might have nothing to do with the $737,000. But episode by episode, we will see the butterfly effect of sorts slowly but surely make its way all the way to those seemingly unrelated things. And all of that foreshadowing continues as we move into the cold open. The scene is monochrome, dark, and cold. It feels almost surreal, empty, as if people were just plucked right out of the scene. In the distance, we hear faint sirens, a sudden sense of urgency now added to this almost impossibly dead scene. If you allow me to indulge in nostalgia for a moment, I distinctly remember that the first time I was watching Breaking Bad, I thought this was foreshadowing Walter's fate and him in some way getting caught up in some more terrible business. To be fair to past me, considering the events of this episode, I think it's fair to say that it definitely has that kind of vibe. Nostalgia aside, we then cut to the eyeball floating in the water, which establishes both a running theme throughout this episode as well as the entire season. In the context of this episode, it holds the message of Walter feeling like he's being watched. It's paranoia more than anything else. But Walter is a loose end, and throughout this episode, we'd see our dynamic duo spiral at the thought of what Tuco might do to them. And the further you get in the season, the more you could also speculate about the eye being the watching eye of the cartel and Gus, but okay, let's not get into that now. More big picture though, in line with the season's theme of these unforeseen consequences, it also hints at almost some kind of higher judgment. It's not that Walter is being watched by someone, it's that there is always something watching. It's almost as if there is this all-seeing eye passing judgment on their wrongdoing in ways we might not even comprehend. We then see the pink teddy bear. Pink in the series is used to convey the naivete of youth and innocence. But because this is Breaking Bad, also the tragedy that often comes along with said naivete and innocence. In this case, the pink bear is a sign of collateral damage, of destroyed childhoods, and the loss of innocence. Like the title of 737, it is also an omen, with a mural in Jane's room depicting that same teddy bear, which again ties back into that idea of there being this almost unseen but fatalistic connection between all of these events. The half-burned face of the bear could also be seen as foreshadowing Walter's state of mind by the end of the season, with him wearing the same exact colored sweater right as Skyler confronts him and leaves the house. Alternatively, if you think of the eye as the all-seeing eye of the cartel and the darkness of the drug world more broadly, then the bear could also be seen as foreshadowing Gus's fate. And if you really want to get into overanalysis, the fact that the bear has its tongue out almost makes it look like this jester just laughing at Walter. Throughout the season, he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars, he's closer to everything he has ever wanted. But at the same time, that cascade that he himself started finally catches up to him. Moments after Skyler leaves the house, the planes collide above him, almost like some form of punishment and higher judgment. And so, with this watching eye, you can't help but ask, are all of these things merely unlucky coincidences, or are they just logical consequences of Walter's actions? Very deep, I know, we'll be talking a lot more about this. Anyway, roll intro. Moving into the episode, we open right where we left off. The last few minutes of the Tuco deal, except this time it's way more yellow, because Mexico, I guess. Even though it's not even Mexico. Both stunned by the brutality on display, their minds immediately resort to just getting as far away as possible and cutting all ties. But for Walter, something else comes first.
Home equity line, 30,000. Say $2,000 a month. 737. $737,000. That's what I need. 11 more drug deals, and always in a public place from now on.
Much like with this very short-lived idea of a no rough stuff type deal, Walter just tries shutting out the dark side of this business. He sees this brutal violence over nothing, but he still reduces it to just $737,000. It doesn't matter what might come to them, what might come to his family. For now, it is just 11 weeks of work. He might consider Tuco as a threat, but as long as he's not the one catching strays, well, they can make do. Before they can leave though, Tuco pulls back in with the now perishing no-dose.
There's no pulse.
It's a big hurry.
I just think we're done here.
You're done.
Now, Walter's calculus shifts a little because they now understand that they are witnesses to murder. Similar to what we saw on Jesse's side with Crazy H, paranoia very quickly takes hold. This isn't some abstract potential ally of Crazy coming to look for them. This time, it's Tuco himself, someone whose wrath Jesse is all too familiar with. Before we catch up with them, we cut to Skyler going through her morning routine. Notably, she glances at the dozens and dozens of medicine bottles, something she has already used to excuse Walter's behavior. But as Walter himself returns home, he's just running on autopilot. He's still dressed in all black and still donning the hats. This is Heisenberg, who was somehow plucked and put back into Walter's house. The shock brought about by Tuco has caused this severe dissociation as he just flicks through the TV channels, one of which is our ever-familiar
Walt, are you okay?
Right?
As he puts down the hat, the burden of this pseudo-crown becomes too much to bear. He begins to sob and cry. He seeks comfort and familiarity, a place to hide from that shrieking in his ears, the sight of blood and violence. But just as quickly, he spirals, and that adrenaline turns to lust. Aggressive lust, to the point of Skyler having to physically push him away. Walter's, let's call it friskiness in the series, is used to convey his explosive moments of pride and adrenaline, of how he has regained control over his life and is actively pursuing these pleasures. We saw that after his first ever deal with Crazy 8 as he returned home and immediately got very close with Skyler. We saw that just last episode with them enjoying their fun time right next to the police car moments after Walter hid in plain sight of the DEA, and now that hits another crescendo as money starts pouring in at the cost of horrifying brutality. But unlike previous times, Skyler obviously does not consent. It's a downright disgusting display of his unstable and power-hungry aggressiveness. Skyler would give him the ouch of the medicine side effects messing with his hormones and generally him not doing so well, but we know that is not the cause of this. This is Walter now directly harming those he claims to be protecting, simply because he is losing grip on, well, kind of reality. Sure, Walter himself is not happy with what he does and immediately retreats inward, but none of that excuses what he has done. Which again feeds right back into the season's overarching theme of these unforeseen consequences. You can apologize, you can regret the things you've done, you can try your best to fix them, but what's done is done. The consequences of those decisions are out of your control. And a very nice little detail here is Walt Jr. seeing the face mask thingy against the fridge. It is a literal stain on their household. It's the first tangible sign that there are rifts opening up between them. Ones caused by nothing more than Walter's constant need for more. Okay, real talk, this scene is disgusting. It's very uncomfortable and I cringe every single time I have to watch it. For Jesse, however, this paranoia manifests very, very differently. We see him buy a gun.
No
If he wanted
headlights.
to kill us, he would have done it at the junkyard.
We are witnesses. We are loose ends right now.
I think throughout all of this, there is pretty strong cognitive dissonance for Walter. Because, yeah, Jesse does have a point. The whole, we cook for 11 weeks and then we are done, sounds very nice on paper, but he can't really argue against Jesse's conclusion. He himself is someone who prefers safety and stability. They are loose ends, and anyone in his position would make sure that those loose ends are neatly tied up. And what makes that all the more complicated is the fact that Walter has already proven himself to Tuco as extremely capable. I mean, he already used some kind of weird chemistry to create an explosion. What if he uses this as blackmail for Tuco? It only makes sense that Tuco would want to get rid of them, right? In reality though, there is paranoia on both sides, and Tuco of course has no intentions of offing either one of them, but more on that in a second.
How would you do it? Specifically, how would you do it step by step?
I always love this sequence because I think it perfectly encapsulates the psychotic nature of Walter. His explosive outbursts, yeah, they're one thing, but you know, they're kinda emotional, it makes sense. But when he boils down these violent acts to just pure arithmetic, it's just chilling. He approaches literally offing the person as if it were methodology of an experiment. Every step of the procedure written out in meticulous detail.
Or just pop, pop, pop.
So 3 shots.
3 shots, or I don't know, 2.
The big guy, Gonzo, he's probably coming at you, right? And how many shots for him?
Another thing we begin to see here is the really collaborative approach of Jesse and Walter. Throughout the first season, we did see a few times of Walter using some of Jesse's ideas. But really, most of the time, it was purely Walter just making the calls. Season 2, on the other hand, is about this relationship becoming much more entwined, both because of Walter's seemingly worsening condition, as well as because there are a number of external threats constantly gunning for them. Unlike Season 1, where most of their problems were kind of just in between the two of them, now we are really dealing with the drug world at large. So with a scene like this, Walter really becomes a teacher or almost parent figure, logically questioning Jesse's approach, and then allowing himself to realize that it is a dead end.
Okay. All right, we'll put a pin in that, but by now...
But at the same time, Jesse was the one who brought up the threat of Tuco in the first place. And while Walter does technically turn out to be correct in saying that he would just off them at the junkyard, it does illustrate that Walter actually listens to Jesse. So yes, this is really the start of a whole lot more trust and collaboration, even if that might get a little bit rocky at times.
Well done. Jesse, as always, just...
As we cut to Marie's kitchen, we are flashbanged by a painful amount of purple, and then by catastrophic yapping, the likes of which even I couldn't replicate.
Listen to me. Hang. Walt Jr. be proud. I know the lingo.
Just like with Season 1, and like we see again in just a moment, this is all about just maintaining control. She will pretend that nothing is wrong and keep talking and talking and talking and talking until people either start agreeing or just can't be asked to argue anymore. And the same exact thing happens as Hank walks in.
You got David, ain't?
Not tonight.
Yeah.
I can't help it if you got your days of the week wrong.
She is unironically gaslighting the people who are actively trying to help her get out of the hole that she has dug for herself. Not only has she completely ignored Skyler's demand of an apology for humiliating her with the stolen tiara, she now refuses to go to her rehab therapy thingy because it is her way of controlling the narrative. Let's just summarize what Marie is trying to say right now. Skyler is wrong about her stealing. She never stole, in fact, but she is doing what she promised and getting help for her kleptomania, even though she didn't steal. But Hank is wrong about the agreed days and they are going to a restaurant today, even though Skyler never responded about going to the restaurant. It's a nonsensical jumble of contradictions that just allows her to feel like she is still in control. She will lie as much as she needs to. She won't ever admit that she was ever wrong. And eventually, those lies will either be accepted as truth or just forgotten because no one really pushes back. Absolutely diabolical. Like, what is wrong with you, Marie? As we cut to the DEA offices, Gomez gives a bit of a lore recap on the mysterious heisters who stole methylamine.
Hey, try rolling it, morons. It's a barrel.
This largely just fuels the cat and mouse game that we see with Hank and Walter, with them immediately connecting the dots that they have switched formulas and that they're also likely pretty trained. In the context of this episode and also the cold open, I think it also definitely fuels the idea that Hank is closing in and we might have actually already caught glimpses of Walt's downfall, especially with them also noting that these might be college students or something like that. That obviously turns out to not be true, but it's a fun little B-plot and again reinforces the theme of paranoia in this episode. As Walter returns home, he notices a very sus-looking SUV watching him before quickly backing away. Naturally, he immediately assumes that he is being followed by Tuco and that adrenaline kicks right back in. The thing is, this is not Tuco. if you look closely at the car, it's a different car. And I mean, if you still had doubts...
It's written very subtly that that's actually a different vehicle. That's actually not Tuco. It's just some dude, just some random dude. So the whole idea is it's just this whole thing spins out. Paranoia of Walt and Jesse spin out.
Right.
This is just Walter going through the same exact emotional turmoil that Jesse did back in Season 1. And somewhat paradoxically, it is also the inverse of what the season is about. These actually are just coincidences that Walter attributes to himself, while at the same time ignoring the actual ramifications of his actions. Walter makes some excuses about not sleeping because his stomach was acting up and whatnot, but Skyler clearly doesn't buy it. Her attitude and really suspicions of Walter will escalate quite quickly throughout Season 2. So these now 2 incidents happening back to back, I think work to show how Walter's lies will begin to unravel. He'll try pulling some desperate story about a fugue state and everyone will support him, but at a certain point, this story just begins to sound comical.
How would he know where I live?
Jesse again brings up the idea, but luckily, Walter has an even better idea.
Beans. Castor.
Walter introduces the idea of using ricin, doing the typical Walter thing of immediately going on a history lesson about how, in the 70s, a Bulgarian journalist was assassinated using ricin. And I, being the overanalysis man, will of course also segue into a history lesson. This is actually a real story about Georgy Markov, and while the KGB was involved, it was technically carried out by the Bulgarian Secret Service. To be fair to old Waltberger, and disclaimer, I am not a lore master in Bulgarian history, but from what I've read, practically speaking, there wouldn't really be a meaningful difference in who actually carried it out. The Bulgarian Secret Service, or Committee for State Security, was closely aligned with the KGB, to the point of their actions being basically indistinguishable. So Walter saying that it was just the KGB is not totally accurate on paper, but in practice, it might as well be true. Skyler sits in the baby room looking at old pictures, including one of her and Ted, who we meet in a few episodes. Her reaction here is obviously a little bit awkward and shaky, as if she knows that she is doing something wrong by lingering on the picture. Which, yeah, can't confirm, this picture would be a source of a lot of drama. And also side notes, I think having just the silhouette knocking is also a very great way of pushing Walter's paranoia onto us the viewers. Walter is our primarily point of view character, so naturally, we assume that the dangers they imagine are in fact real. So now seeing that manifest through Skyler's point of view definitely rattles you a little bit. And side note, not sure if it was intentional, but later when Hank calls Walter, it momentarily makes you ask whether this wasn't Hank after all. I think they just really did a great job of capturing this sense of the walls closing in on us. Bravo, Vince! And actually Bryan Cranston, because he directed the episode.
You wanna sit down first?
Depends on whether or not this is going to be about Marie.
Hank says that he's not here because Marie asked, but he is here because of Marie. He says that she's not even talking to him, and basically just begs Skyler to call her back. Skyler tells Hank about the tiara, expecting that to be a bit of a truth bomb, but it's not.
Yeah, if I thought you were gonna return it, I would've never...
You knew about this.
Hank tries spinning it into this whole thing of how they should support her, but Skyler just refuses to entertain any of it. Everything comes pouring out as she just starts going down the list saying, we have a surprise baby on the way, a husband who disappears for days on end and doesn't even talk to her, a moody son who does the same thing, a overrun checking account, and a lukewarm water heater that puts out rusty looking crap and is rotting the floor.
But oh, I see. She's the one with the really important problems.
This is another excellent, super raw scene that perfectly encapsulates how ridiculous what we're watching actually is, and just how much Skyler is actually just tanking without making a fuss about it. Her leaving Walter isn't some spur-of-the-moment crazy emotional twist. Time after time after time after time, she chose to remain silent and just let it slide. But then, she finally started asking questions, and the answers to those questions, well, you know, bravo Vince. Returning to Walt and Jesse, we get a very different kind of cooking scene. This time, literally a cooking scene, I guess, because...
Beans.
Also, prepare to hear this like 1,000 times throughout Season 2, but already in this episode, we see Jesse at least attempting to mirror Walter's decision-making and even phrasing. Just like Walter did with the bullet counting, he tries breaking down their story into just about every possible follow-up. And when that conversation stalls, he even says the same exact,
"Okay, well, we'll just put a pin in that then."
Okay. All right, we'll put a pin in that, but...
We'll be talking plenty more about this, but if Walter's whole thing is absorbing the traits of the people that he kills, then Jesse's is absorbing the traits of Walter. Throughout Season 1, I kept stressing the apply yourself message from Walter because this is the season where Jesse will try to do that and replicate Walter's actions basically one for one.
DBAA, apply yourselves.
This right here is just another small-scale example of that. This right here is a very on-the-nose Chekhov's gun just to remind viewers of the extra phone that Jesse bought Walter last season. For now, it might look like just an awkward fumble by Walter, but clearly, this is already foreshadowing him messing this up again. The existence of the second phone would obviously spur up a whole bunch of drama very soon, so this is just very cleverly hidden recap.
You been home yet?
Walter obviously expects the worst, an attack from Tuco, and while it's not that, it's somehow something almost equally bad. A picture of Gonzo and no doze.
I'm taking this.
No, it's my gun. I need it.
No, you don't. Not if you leave town.
They immediately bolt, Walter to get Skyler, while Jesse grabs the money to just run. And while Walter does his absolute best to cosplay a Resident Evil protagonist, he quickly finds Skyler just kinda vibing in the bath.
So where have you been this time?
Walter, of course, doesn't let up, immediately going for the money, but also leaving the gun there. Hiding the money and the gun in a diaper box is obviously very on the nose in terms of symbolism. But what I find more interesting is the logic behind that. This is, in many ways, another 2-7 bluff by Walter. He is convinced that Tuco is going to attack at any moment, yet he still needs to be proactive about not being caught. And so, he ensures this swift escape by hiding everything in the easy-to-move and inconspicuous-looking diaper box, but he does not carry the gun himself. But back on Hank's side, we see another mini plot twist.
You got the world's dumbest criminal. This guy wasn't murdered.
And just like that, we see that this entire episode was just paranoia. No one is going after them. This really was just a series of coincidences and misunderstandings. And so, we get a moment to breathe. Walter goes to talk to Skyler. He even drops the incoming call, something that at this point in the series is a pretty big deal for Walter. He genuinely attempts to pause his Heisenberg business to just finally talk. But this is Breaking Bad, so before he says a word, he notices the lights.
Get in.
So yeah, it was paranoia, but like, it also wasn't. Their logic was faulty, and Tuco was never concerned about tying up these loose ends, but Tuco was going to yoink them for other reasons, namely having Walter cook for them and starting a new organization south of the border. It was all coincidences, but a different set of coincidences did in fact result in a very similar outcome. So yes, Walter has now been kidnapped and is on his way to Mexico. Ought to be fun. Final fun fact though, if you ever thought that the background of the car looks weirdly dark compared to the rest of the scene, you'd actually be right. These are stitched together shots and Tuco's actor isn't even there. Because of filming scheduling, they had to shoot Tuco's scenes at a different location and they just had to make do. All of these scenes just have someone from the crew working as a stand-in. Neither the hand or the shots we get at the back of his head or anything here is actually Tuco. And with that, that is Season 2, Episode 1. Season 2 is such an interesting season. We blitz through the whole Tuco storyline, which is kind of a leftover from Season 1. We then get this middle period where Walt and Jesse are kind of working on their own, kind of like Season 1, but also not really because we start to rope in Gus, and then obviously Saul as well. And underneath all of that, we have this cartel stuff, and then there's Jane and her father, and that looms over all of this. It feels like everything in this season is moving at this breakneck pace, and you constantly have that looming omen of the cold opens that just show something bad has happened at Walter's house. I love all the foreshadowing there, and I can't wait to talk about it as that tension continues mounting and mounting, right up until we see, again, Gus, and it really feels like Walter might be dead. He of course isn't, but it definitely feels like Walter's house might have seen something very, very bad. But alright, not to start gushing about it now, we'll have plenty of time to talk about all of this. So, I hope to see you back as we continue overanalyzing Breaking Bad. And that's the video. I promise Season 2 is not going to take us like 2 years to cover, and I promise I'm not going to disappear for another year in between episode 1 and 2. I think so anyway. Other than that, usual reminder, join the Discord if you never want to miss an upload from either of my channels. If you want to catch any of my yappers live, I stream over at Twitch and also on YouTube and on my second channel. My usual stream time is right around when videos should be dropping, so in case you're bored and it's the same time of day and there's no video dropping, I might be streaming. But yes, with that, I want to give a massive thank you to our current patrons and YouTube members who allow me to produce even more of these for you all. And let's also give a warm welcome to the newest members of the team, Diego Asher, Fishbeing, and I'd Flyer 87. Without you, there'd be a whole lot less of my ramblings, so seriously, thank you, thank you. Other than that, I want to say thank you very much for watching, I hope you have a great day, and hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!